Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Vicky. I'm admissions manager here at ISHCMC, and I will be your host for this webinar. We'd also like to let you know that this event is being recorded so that we can share it with you after. And that's it. So we will get started. Thank you again for joining. As you can see, I'm joined here by Miss Kim Green, who is our head of school. Thank you, Kim, for joining us. And she's going to start off by sharing with you a little bit about who we are at ISHCMC.
Sinjal, everybody, it's so wonderful to meet you, and thank you so much for joining us in this virtual opportunity. And thank you to Vicky for being our host. It's greatly appreciated. As Vicky said, my name is Kim, and I am the head of school here at ISHCMC. I am a New Zealander by origin. I have been in education for 25 years and have had the privilege of working internationally now for 16 years. For me, it is an absolute delight to be here and to be the head of school at the International School Ho Chi Minh City, because we have such a fabulous community which is all aligned with wonderful aspirations and your children right at the centre and the heart of everything that we do. So this morning I would like to be able to introduce you to who we are and to share a few of the pieces that we would call very close to our hearts. At International School Ho Chi Minh City, at ISHCMC, well-being and learning for us sit right at the core and right at the centre of everything that we do. And they sit at the core so every member of our community can be energised, engaged and empowered. We want every member of our community to be able to take action, to be active participants in our communities, and to flourish and be the absolute best that every individual can be. We are an IB school, and that means that we offer 3 IB programs here at ISHCMC: the primary years program, the middle years program, and the diploma program. What you will see in an IB school is you will see learners engaged, you will see learners collaborating, you will see learners thinking conceptually and working through a process of exploration and discovery. Our learners go through that journey whilst we as a school community ensure and maintain academic rigour and an academic growth pathway for every child. And for me, I'm absolutely delighted to be able to celebrate that through the end point of the journey our children take. The end point is when they graduate in grade 12. And last year, our students here in Ho Chi Minh City had the highest results in the city, and they also had results that were well above world averages. We are so proud of every child that goes through our school and goes through the ISHCMC journey. Every child that goes through a journey on one of our 2 campuses, and for some of our children, they may go through a journey on both campuses. Our secondary campus was opened 3 years ago. It's a new facility which contains state-of-the-art facilities, theatres, gymnasiums, science labs, music spaces, design spaces. To be honest, it's a great place to be. It's a whole lot of fun. Our primary campus is our original campus, and it's grown over time. We are so proud of our original campus because it holds our history. Also because it's been renovated all the way through the learning spaces so that we've created wonderful collaborative hubs where our students can engage with each other and they can build on ideas. In addition, our primary campus actually has spaces such as the library and the art space that have won international awards for their design. We have a long history. ISHCMC is 27 years old, and we are so proud to have been the first school that was established in Ho Chi Minh City, the first international school established in Ho Chi Minh City, and the first school that was established for expatriates. To this day, we still serve our expatriate community. We have great pride that we currently have over 60 different nationalities which choose to call ISHCMC home on a daily basis. Many of our families come from or are here in Ho Chi Minh City and in Vietnam because they're working with embassies, they're working with NGOs, they may be small business owners, or they're expatriates who are here in Vietnam as experts for a period of time to contribute to the growth of the Vietnamese community. Year on year, we are so proud of our growth. We continue to go from strength to strength. And you can see from the timeline that there have been some really major milestones for us. The establishment of our school, the relocation of campuses, becoming a 3-program IB school, being accredited by international accrediting agencies, joining our Cognita Schools group, and then more recently, celebrating our 20th graduating class. So in 2020, it was our 20th graduating class. We had close to 100 students that graduated. They graduated with great pride, not just in their academic achievement, but in who they were as people, who they were as humans. They graduated with a sense of empathy, with a sense of compassion, with an understanding of how to serve in the community, and knowing how to look after their own well-being. As a school community, having been here in Ho Chi Minh for 27 years, there is a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise. We also have many alumni. In fact, thousands of alumni who are connected to our school community. And as a leader of a school community, it makes me so proud to know that the ISHCMC pride lives in so many places here in Vietnam, but also abroad. We are a school that prides ourselves on providing opportunities and choices. We're a school that prides ourselves on being able to build ownership and agency within our student body so that they have an intrinsic motivation and love for learning. And we believe we do that by being able to provide such a wide variety of opportunities that each child can discover their passions, their talents, and their skills. They can see and find their strengths, and they can draw on those strengths to continue their ISHCMC journey. So here at ISHCMC, I often engage in conversations with our parents, and they'll share with me that the wide variety of opportunities for their children is one of the reasons why they choose our school. Our children can be in competitive swim teams, they can be in competitive sports teams, they can engage in the performing arts, they can engage in service projects. They can also navigate as they move up through the school choices around different subjects or different areas of passion that they'd like to choose. I think, to be honest, a large part of being able to create opportunity and choice also comes from the pedagogy and the way that our teachers give so much room and space for our young people to be able to connect to relevant content and to be able to make meaning out of the context that they're living in. But that's not to forget that our parents are also a really important part of our community, and opportunities and choices exist for you too. Our parent-teacher organisation is incredibly active, and there are many different projects that you as parents can be involved in. There's a lot of different parent learning opportunities, and then of course there's the opportunity to walk the journey with your child through their schooling. I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight into who we are as a school and some of the elements that we deeply value.
Thank you for sharing about who we are. And I believe that, as we know, the last year has been a very special year for everybody. And so there's something new that you've introduced this year for our new families and our new students who are coming in, something that helps them transition through into the school and focuses on the students and families' well-being. Do you mind to share a little bit about that with our families?
Sure, Vicky. I think I would loop right back to the concept of an ISHCMC journey and the values that sit right at the centre of who we are: well-being and learning. And then I will reference the world that we're in at the moment. When we came back into school this school year, there were families that have been part of ISHCMC for a long time, and families who were wanting to move into Vietnam who could not necessarily do so because of the current environmental climate, because of border closures, and because of the pandemic situation. So as a team, we anchored ourselves back on our values of well-being and learning, and knew that we needed to make sure that we could support our families and our potential families as they navigated their way back to ISHCMC. For some of our families, that has been an incredibly long and difficult journey. For some of our families, they've been out of the country trying to figure out how they might get back here. But whilst they have been out of the country, our team offered their children a home-based learning program. That home-based learning program enabled the children not only to maintain their academic program and their academic growth, but it also enabled them to build social connections. So our teachers were just phenomenal. They would have the students virtually in the classroom, connecting with the other children, engaging with the learning, building those relationships. And as we watched the children come to school, they would come to school, they would arrive, and the other children would say, "Oh my goodness, my friend is here, you're real." And they would be enveloped into our ISHCMC family. As we've moved through time, the majority of our families that were trying to get into Vietnam in semester 1 or return to Vietnam have returned. And as I hope you're realizing and understanding, if you're not currently in Vietnam at the moment, that moving into Vietnam is getting a little easier as we continue to move forward in time. But we've recognized that transition is still a really critical phase of a child's life and a family's life. And we still recognize that at the moment coming into Vietnam, there's a quarantine requirement. So our team have created and developed now a 3-week transition program. It's called Transition to Campus. And as our families start to navigate that journey from current location into Vietnam, our team reach out, they connect, they start to connect and have conversations about learning that looks different at different ages, whether you're early explorer, or whether you're in the primary school, or whether you're in the upper part of the secondary school. And then when you arrive here in Vietnam, our team have a package delivered to you, and it gives you and your children an opportunity to start orientating yourself into school life at ISHCMC. For us, what we want to be able to know is that from day one, when your child walks through the gates into our school, that they are connected, they have the beginnings of relationships, and that they're ready to start their learning journey. I think that through this webinar that you're part of, you're going to have a really unique and beautiful opportunity to understand a little bit more about our Transition to Campus program, because you will actually get to hear from the people who have been part of it.
Thank you very much, Kim.
Well,
so we're joined as well by our primary principal and secondary principal, and also primary student and secondary student. So they're going to share with you their experiences of the Transition to Campus learning program. So first, I would like to introduce Miss Kate, who is with Madeline at our primary campus. Hi, Miss Kate. Hi, Madeline.
Hi. Hi, Vicky.
Hi,
everybody.
Hi, and I would like to hand over to you. You can share a conversation with us about what it was like in the Transition to Campus learning.
Thanks, Vicky. Yes, hi, everybody. I'm here with Maddie. Maddie has had many experiences over the global pandemic. She has had face-to-face teaching here at ISHCMC. She's had online learning when she was in the States, and a TTC experience as well. So we're just going to have a conversation. I'm going to ask her some questions, and she's going to share her experiences with all of you. So welcome, Maddie.
Hi.
So Maddie's in Studio 5.
Yeah.
And as I said, she's had multiple experiences through the pandemic. But two of the things we're going to touch on today are well-being and her learning. So in terms of connecting with people during your transition to campus learning, how did that go for you?
It was pretty sometimes easy, sometimes a little bit complicated, because I was able to email my teacher and get Google Meet calls with her. But sometimes it would take a while for her to respond, like no more than an hour, but just because she was teaching another class.
Yes, so it's quite difficult because the teacher's got 20 children and then you're away. So in terms of your connectivity with the teacher, how did you connect with her? Just by email or
Email,
Cecil?
and I think 1 or 2 times a week I would have a Google Meet call with her.
Okay. And what about your friends? How did you connect with them?
Usually not through the school, but after they were to get out of school while I was in quarantine because we were in the same time zone, I was able to have a little group FaceTime call with a couple of them.
And how did this pandemic affect your well-being, do you think?
Definitely it's not what I'm used to because when I was in Oregon, we would you wore masks wherever you were. It didn't matter if you were outside or anything, you would have to wear a mask. So it's definitely different than normal, but I feel like the learning experience was very nice because I was again able to get out of bed whenever I wanted and do work in my pajamas.
So when you got to our time zone, you could get up whenever you wanted and wear your pajamas. And then how would you participate in your learning with your teacher?
It was much easier to call with her and email her, whereas when I was in the US, I would have to wait a bit for her to respond because completely different time zones. But when we were in quarantine, again, she would respond within an hour and it was easier to call and she wouldn't have to ask, oh, what time is it for you?
Yeah. And so what sort of assignments did you have during this time?
Well, there were a couple challenges with math because I had a couple math tests that I wasn't able to do online. But we somewhat started a project while I was online, but I got out of quarantine in time to actually do the part that needs to be done in school.
So in terms of the learning, you had maths and unit of inquiry and reading and research. Do you think you missed anything through being in quarantine?
I mean, there were a couple things that I missed, kind of the whole class memorized their times tables, and I had to do that separately. But other than that, I was definitely very connected, and I was able to do most of the things that my class was doing.
So you feel like your learning didn't get hindered by being in quarantine for 2 weeks?
No, not really.
And what if you had a challenge in your learning? Who did you ask if your teacher was teaching at the time?
I would usually just go to my dad, but my dad would have a couple of calls a day, meeting calls with his work. So sometimes if my teacher wasn't available and either was he, I would just go to Seesaw. She would give me a couple links and a Google Docs. I was able to go there and she would have a little thing of links that I can go to if I need help with work.
So in terms of being with the other children, there was a time when I saw you at assembly on an iPad. How did that make you feel to be part of that and be in the assembly when you're actually not in the school?
I was happy that I was actually able to get into the call because some of the calls wouldn't work. But it was nice to be included in those big things because that was the learners assembly, right, or whatever it's called. And yeah, I actually ended up getting an award there. And it was I felt honored that I could be in the call, and my teacher wouldn't just send me email saying, "Oh, you won."
You won, you got an award, but you were actually able to be there.
And my teacher also looked kind of happy to see me in the call.
And other times you used the iPad were for lessons that perhaps your teacher felt really important. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, just a month ago, we finished, over a month ago, I guess, we did a project where we all had to pick, not necessarily an issue in the world, but a type of, I guess, natural disaster, that caused bad things in the world. I ended up doing avalanches, but I was happy that I was prepared for that because before I got out of quarantine, my teacher, she told me that that I was able to start a couple things while I was in quarantine, but she warned me that I was going to have something versus me coming back to school and being like, oh, what are we doing?
Yeah. So did you feel like the learning and your well-being was looked after when you were in quarantine?
Yeah, definitely.
I know obviously by your dad and your sister, but what about the school? Do you think that they?
Yeah, my teacher, when I would go on Google Meet calls with her, she would sometimes ask me, oh, how are you doing? What have you been doing in quarantine to keep yourself occupied? Things
have
like
a
that.
conversation with her regularly.
Mhm.
So how, after your quarantine, we created these kits where the kids get their learning and they get a stationary kit, because I remember you saying to me that you didn't have stationary when you arrived in quarantine.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we might do better as a school for people who are in quarantine doing TTC?
Well, I'm glad that this situation was worked out and people are now gonna have supplies. iPads. Yeah, iPads were definitely kind of a struggle. I did have my own iPad luckily, but I'm not sure if all the kids that are gonna be like going into quarantine are gonna have one. But yeah, so if like there was a way that you could put an iPad in there and they would just like, that's what they would have in quarantine, but when they got back to school, it's the same iPad they would use. Because we all have iPads in class, and I feel like when I was out of school, or like in school, but out of school, it was hard because I had to log in for like everything. Because after this, like during the summertime, it kind of logged me out of all that stuff on
Yes.
my iPad.
Yeah.
So I had to re-sign into that. A couple times actually I had to change my passwords because I forgot them. But yeah, iPads would definitely be.
So we could also give you an email with all of those things included. Is there anything else we might do better?
If you could send those kids snacks, I think they'd love that because there were really not that many snacks in the hotel room.
We can look into that. We do that for the teachers when they come. So we might be able to put together a little snack pack.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else you want to share about your experience with these people?
During quarantine, my friend just got out of quarantine yesterday, and we found out that we were in the same hotel, same floor, and I'm pretty sure we might have been in the same exact room.
Oh.
So that's just a kind of little funny thing. But hotel-wise, this has nothing to do with school, but the hotel was nice, and I felt like it did provide me an environment that I was able to learn in, because there were open windows like everywhere and nice desks, and the little kind of like by the desk there was a little like green sofa type of loft thing that I was able to do some of my work in.
Oh, it sounds quite comfortable for a swim room.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maddie.
Yeah.
Over to you, Vicky.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Madeline, for sharing your experiences. It's great to hear about how you came through the transition to campus program. There's a couple of questions that came through whilst you were chatting, and I think actually Madeline answered some of them as we were going through. I'm just wanting to ask Ms. Kate, do we have any students currently in quarantine doing the TTC program at primary?
Yes, we do. We have 3. We have a brother and a sister who are grade 2 and grade 5, and another grade 5.
They'll be joining us physically in school soon. There's also,
yes. So what we've done from Madeline's experience is send them the stationary kits and their work, several booklets of work to do while they're there, so that they actually have the physical equipment that they need to actually do the learning, because not everybody in a primary school has a device.
So those ones go through to the hotel or the location where they're doing quarantine?
Yes, so what we did was our secretaries wrote to the families and asked them what hotel they were in and what their room number was, and on the day they arrived we were able to actually send them their kits. So they were very happy to receive them, and some of the feedback we got on a previous grade 5 student was that it was just fabulous for their daughter to have the booklets, access to the teacher, access to stationary items, and a little welcome from her teacher and from the school.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Kate. If there's any more questions, I'll come back to you. Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you.
We have a question here from Erica, who's asked, and maybe Kim, you're best to answer this question. What happens if a family begins the 3-week program? So it starts the week before they would be flying in, but then they don't get that flight, because as we know, things change, and even though we have a date for travel, it could unfortunately get pushed back. So in that sense, if it's going to be longer than 3 weeks, what would happen to those students?
I think it's a really good question. And I think I would come back to the very original point of how we work as a school, which is about building connections and relationships. So the conversations that would be happening between a family and our admissions team, and then our team, our academic team, would be ongoing and would be iterative, so that we would be consistently knowing where you are within that journey. We understand that sometimes what we plan doesn't turn out. I think as a school community, we like to be able to remain open and flexible, and we know that each situation looks different. So whilst we operate a 3-week transition to campus program, we would hope that the communication between us would land us in a place where we would be able to time it the right way, so that we're able to make sure that that's closing out whilst you're in quarantine. I would just encourage anybody, as you're going through this journey in this unsettled environment where things do change, is that communication and that connection and relationship with our admissions team is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and I can say from admissions that we have had a longer relationship than normal with some of our families, but just last week, at the beginning of January, we did manage to welcome some who we've been talking to for 8 months. So it is possible, and eventually you do arrive and we get to welcome you physically to campus. We say thank you to Kate and Madeline, and we have also with us today Mr. Hurtado, who is our secondary principal, and he is joined by one of our secondary students, Bart. Hi, Mr. Hurtado. Hi, Bart.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. So we've just spoken to Kate and to Madeline in primary, and they've shared their experiences. And so we'll hand over to you for you to have a conversation about how it was coming through the transition to campus learning.
Okay, so thank you, Vicky. I'm joined here by Bart Hankel, who's a grade 9 student. He's been with us at ISHCMC for some time, and he's experienced both face-to-face learning in the normal school context, and he also went through the transition to campus experience. So what we're going to do is I'll ask him a few questions in the same way as Miss Kate did to find out what his experience was like, some of the challenges that he experiences and some of the successes, and what learning was like. So thanks, Bart, for joining me, and thanks for agreeing to answer some of our questions. So the first question I would ask is, when you were in the transition to campus program, what were the tools and mechanisms you used to be able to connect with your learning?
To connect with my teachers and classmates, I used my laptop, my school laptop, which I took with me on my trip, which was meant to be 1 week last school year, but it ended up to be 7 months. And it was very useful that it was there, because I was logged into all my accounts and I could easily talk to all the teachers.
Okay, excellent. So in terms of talking to your teachers, what kind of things were you using? How did you connect with them? Was it things like Google Meet?
I used Google Meet mainly to talk to the teachers, and also homework was sent through Secta. Okay,
very good. So that's great that you had that kind of connectivity with your teachers, and you had the both the hardware and the kind of software and tools to be able to connect with your learning. One of the other important things, I guess, is as you're going through a transition to campus process or a transitioning process being away is your ability to connect with your friends and your peers. Were you still able to connect with friends during that 7 months that you were on quarantine?
Yeah, I connected with my friends through social media like Snapchat and Instagram. So in class, I only connected with the teacher and to ask them about learning because my friends were not allowed to use their phones in class. But outside of class, when they were outside of class, we would talk through social media.
Very good. Do you think that aspect of your experience, that ability to be able to connect with the learning and the ability to be able to connect with your friends and peers was important for your well-being and your how you felt about the whole experience? Because 7 months is a long time.
Yeah, it was a very different time than before. So I needed some help to adapt to change, and my friends and family helped me with that through talking to me and stuff like that. Yeah.
Very good. So you said that your learning experience was you'd have your work set through Sector, which is our learning platform that we use at the school. So what would that look like? Would you have on a daily basis, would you be set some assigned tasks to do each lesson? Would you be set assignments to do? Were you given like assignment deadlines? Tell us a little bit about what a normal class experience might look like.
It was very similar to just normal learning, except that the teacher would explain the tasks on Google Meet, but the tasks were just as normal set on Sector courses, and assessments that would go in our report were set on the Sector assignments. And it was partially explained, like it was more explained in that time on Sector, but if we had any questions, we could ask the teacher through Google Meet.
Very good. So I guess one of the things that I would normally say that is great about a classroom setting is when you're in the classroom and you have a challenge, so you don't know something or you need some clarification, you would reach out to the teacher and say, I'm not quite sure about this, can you explain a little better? It sounds like that might be something that would be a little bit more complicated in an online setting. Were you able to kind of get around that and navigate it? And if so, how did you do that?
Most of the time that was very possible because the teacher would look at the Google Meet very often and look at the text in Google Meet where we can send messages to them. But sometimes the teacher, their microphone wouldn't work or their audio wouldn't work, so they couldn't listen to our questions. And it would take a very long time for our questions to be answered.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one of the main challenges you experienced, is just that lag time. Okay. So in those kind of, I think as you look at the whole experience, did you feel supported by your teachers? Did you feel supported in the kind of process? And outside of your teachers, who else might you have turned to, or did you turn to for support?
So I think my teachers supported me very well during this time because they went out of their way to help me and other online learners so that we know the task better and so that they can help us further to understand what we have to do. And outside of class, I was like my family helped me with some things that I didn't understand that they were very good at because they also learned it. Yeah. So mainly it's my family and that would help me outside of school with
Very good. So one of the things I guess people, particularly those that it's for an extended period of time, if it ends up being a long time, the challenge people often can worry about, or a parent might worry about, and you as a student might worry about is, am I on track? Am I keeping up to date? How did you keep on track with your work, and how did you know you were on track?
Yeah, that was hard sometimes because I was not sure if sometimes the teacher would set it on another platform other than Secta, or if that they set it in the Google Meet and I missed it. And that would be hard for me to know if I did all the tasks and if I had finished them to the extent that they would need to be finished.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But for the most part, you felt that you were able to stay on track.
Yeah.
Because And was the things like when you're doing your assignments or assessments, did you think you received the right kind of feedback to help you?
Yeah.
Very good.
On sector.
On sector. That's great. Now, one of the things I guess is quite a difficulty when you're in an online setting, and particularly if you're either in a remote place or potentially in a quarantine hotel, is kind of maintaining your focus. And how did you do that? Because it must be quite challenging. Like when you come to school and you have a normal structure, it's pretty straightforward. But when you're in a different context, it's a bit more difficult. So how did you keep focused during the online learning?
Well, I often tried to not be distracted by keeping things that would distract me away, like my phone, or I would go to a room where my family would not distract me. But sometimes it was very hard because, so like if I was bored in class because I was finished with the task, then I would go off and do something else. But
it's okay. So what if you've completed the task? It's good. So one of the things I always talk about with students when they're in those kind of experiences is, sometimes it's a challenge to know that you're not just that you're keeping on track, but you're making progress. Did you still feel you were making progress with your learning? And
yeah, I felt like I learned a lot during that time, because not only could I ask the teacher for help, but I could also easily access Google if I needed something. So yeah, I felt like I learned a lot in that time. Yeah.
And can you kind of, like, one of the things that a number of students who we spoke to during their experiences, either of online learning or being in transition to campus, was that there were slightly different learning activities that might have been set, or that certain learning activities really were great when you were in that kind of setting. Which kind of activities did you really enjoy when you were in transition to campus?
When I was doing the online learning, I felt like the activities that, like watching a movie and taking notes from that I could enjoy that, because the movie would be watched on Google Meet, and it would be easy to ask the teacher a question without disturbing the entire class. And it's also easy to just take notes without losing focus.
Very good. So tell me what you actually had to go through quarantine. That's correct, right? What was your quarantine experience like? How would you summarize it?
It was long. It was 2 weeks. It sounds not that long, but it felt very long because there weren't a lot of things to do. So all I did was just watch Netflix all day.
Thank goodness for Netflix. But overall, just despite the fact that it was perhaps complicated by being in a singular location, do you think it was a positive experience overall? Do you think it's one that's easy to kind of cope with and survive and still stay connected with your learning?
Yeah, because I was in a hotel and there was Wi-Fi and there were charging ports, so it was easy to still learn stuff on my computer and to stay in contact with my friends and family whilst in quarantine.
Very good. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Bart, about your experience overall, and anything you think is important that a parent or a student might like to know about the transition to a campus program or quarantine, etc.?
I think that it's important to know that actually, no, there's nothing.
Okay, we seem to have covered everything. That's good. Well, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Bart, for taking time out of lessons today to come and talk to us about your experiences of online learning and transition to campus and quarantine, and being so candid and honest about it, and telling us about how the learning experience was for you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and back to you, Vicky.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Bart. Before we let you go, we just have a question that's come through on the chat from Deepak. And I think they've heard you mentioning this word sector, and there's a little bit of interest in what that is. And so are we using a different platform for assignments? Are we using Google Classroom? Could you explain the two different things and how we use them?
So, yeah, so what we use for our learning our learning platform and our learning management system is Sector, and what we use is, in terms of kind of keeping it as a singular framework to support the functionality and ease for students, we made sure that all information in terms of posted assignments, posted essential learning, all went through that single learning platform, so that students always knew where to access it. Each day or each class that would take place, all work was set in that specific class, so students knew where to look. All assessments were submitted there. All feedback was posted in there. All grades, if there was any graded assignments, were posted in there, so there was a singular location. Also, within the lesson organizer on that specific day, any of the Google Meet links were placed in that lesson, so students knew exactly where to click on a link to know how to connect with the learning on that particular lesson. So essentially what we tried to do is, our streamlined process was work with what students are very familiar with, channel everything into that learning platform so that it was very easy to find things, and keep it as stress-free and easy as possible. So in answer to the question, what is Sector? The bottom line is it's a learning management system that the students connect with for their learning, assessment, and get their feedback through.
Okay, that's great. And another question, how much time would you say the student will receive from the teacher, say in a day or in a lesson? How much time?
Well, I mean, it would vary. I mean, the context is quite important in those situations. Obviously, a student that was within the same time zones or within a couple of time zones, the ease at which you could connect directly with the lesson would increase the contact time. Those that were many time zones away, it might mean that the connectivity had to take place at a scheduled time and it might reduce it. But I mean, I'd probably defer to Bart and say, how much in the context of the lesson, how much time did you get to connect with either the activities you were set or with the teacher?
I think that depends on what the class was doing. So if the class was doing an activity where people had to collaborate, then I would spend a lot of time collaborating with my peers and the teachers to also. But if it was just a regular class, and then the main time that I would connect with the teacher was when the teacher was explaining something to the whole class and to the computer, or when I was asking a question and they would explain it to me in the video.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. There's another question that I'd like to direct to you, Kim. This year's MAP tests were postponed, and the question is, would that be an issue for the school in the admissions procedure on reviewing applicants?
I think it's a really good question, Vicky, because globally we know that there have been different assessments that were postponed or didn't happen. There is different information that's available because of what happened through the global pandemic. Again, I think we are very blessed because we have a fabulous admissions team who will look at the holistic profile of a child and look at the data from past and present. And then I think our academic team are very cognizant of the fact that for particular different reasons, assessments like the measure of academic progress may or may not have happened at the end of last school year. I think the important piece for probably me to state is that the measure of academic progress for us as a school is about the tracking of growth of a child and being able to see that a child is consistently meeting the growth expectations and that they are on a growth journey. So when we would look at the MAP data, we would be looking for those trends over time. We'd be looking to see that a child is growing through their journey. And I think the measure of academic progress for us as well as a school at the admission stage just helps us understand and know the child so much better. And that means that we can understand what some of their strengths might be as they're coming into our school context. But it is just one point of data. And as we know, one point of data is only one truth, and the real truth comes from multiple triangulated points of information. So simple answer, the MAP tests or not having that map data would not be a barrier to your admission into the school.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And that concludes our little meeting today about the Transition to Campus Learning Program. I hope that everyone has got more information and more insight into it, into who we are as a school, but also into how we can welcome you through the admissions process and then into school.
And I think, Vicky, the last thing that I would just also highlight is going back to a little bit of the story of the transition to campus. We started a journey where our commitment was to make sure that any of our children that were still out of country were nurtured and that their learning journey and their growth was not affected. So there was continuous learning for them. We're now in a phase where our focus is on looking at how we can now support families that are making decisions to come into Vietnam through what is a really challenging time. And I guess I would premise the piece that, we've spoken about that being 3 weeks. Well, in reality, it's not 3 weeks. It begins 3 weeks before you come to ISHCMC, but your transition and your welcome into our community is an ongoing process. So once you're on the ground, there are many, many different ways that we look after and support our students through their ongoing orientation into the school. And many ways we look after our parents. I promise you, we will look after our parents too.
Parents are important.
So maybe, Vicky, in another webinar, maybe it might be more about some of those other orientation opportunities that are there for our families once they land on the ground. But I guess I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you all with us in a little space here in our beautiful ISHCMC. And I do really hope that we get the chance to meet with you in person very, very soon. It would be my absolute pleasure and delight.
Yes, thank you. And so just to end this the webinar today, we are doing virtual admissions meetings. We have some virtual tours that we can introduce you. So if you've not already connected with us, we'll be reaching out to see if there's any way that we can support you where you are right now. And if you do have any questions that we've not answered, if you put them in the chat already, we'll be getting back to you individually to answer those questions. And if you haven't sent any, but you think of them later, you can see that in the chat box there, my colleagues just put in the admissions email address. And so we do welcome any questions and the chance to connect with you further. Okay.
So for now,
Thank
I guess
you.
we'll see you all soon.
Goodbye.
Bye.